Okay, welcome to the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust meeting of Thursday, December 14, 2023. We are meeting at Memorial Hall in Town Hall. Given that it's just past 9 a.m., I'm calling the meeting to order. And we have a couple of guests with us today. We have Steve Herrera, who has expressed an interest in joining us, so we welcome him to sit in on our meeting and give a little bit of an idea of the type of work we do. And we also have Jenny Gingras, our planning director, who will be talking to one of the points on our particularly our housing production plan that we're looking to create. So we have two sets of minutes that we're looking. One is from our November 9th meeting. I've reviewed it. I didn't see any issues with that. And so I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes for November 9th.
Will we accept the minutes for November 9th?
Okay. Second.
Provided?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor? We don't need to do a roll call.
No.
Okay. The second set of minutes were from a remote meeting we had, particularly to discuss Lawton's Way purchase, and that was on November 15th at 4:30. Once again, I've reviewed those minutes. I don't have any issues, so I'll entertain a
Will
motion.
we accept the minutes as presented?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, good.
That's easy.
Thank you. Moving on.
Just-
We're going to talk about a housing production plan. Now, in your packet that everybody got was the proposal, if you will, from the VHB to use some funds, or actually Jenny has indicated we can use some, if we pony up it's still 13,800? Yeah, if you want to talk a little bit, just very briefly about what this will do, what they'll provide.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So housing production plan is done by a lot of communities, really to take a look at the comprehensive planning strategies that they have in their community existing and look at what we can do for the future. Really, it looks at the next 5 years typically. It analyzes the existing housing inventory and then what the demographics are, what the trends are, and then determines or gives you an idea of what we will need for the future to accommodate the community. So it also takes a look at affordable housing goals, what the community wants to see. Sometimes there's surveys that are done as part of it. So it really takes a in-depth look at the housing needs for the community. And then, do you have any questions about that, or I can go on to the money?
No, I mean, I'll open it up to other questions or comments.
So I also put an FAQ from the state,
Okay,
from
great.
now Executive Office of the HLC in the packet, which is what it is and what the purpose is. I think it's important for the public to know, and I don't know if you mentioned, this is being broadcast and recorded by
Yes,
Westborough.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
I didn't
so,
mention that. But we are
that when towns are below the 10% threshold under 40B, 10% subsidized housing inventory, or SHI, developers can come in and ignore local zoning. However, if those communities have a housing production plan and they can show that they're meeting the goals of the production plan, then there are actually limits on what developers can do under 40B, and it starts to restore control. Westborough is above that 10%, and we plan, and we're working, and the trust is part of that, to stay there. So this really isn't, we're not doing this because we need to, because it's a defense mechanism. I think we're doing this because it's great planning to look forward. And even for the work of the trust, and part of what we're hoping to gain by participating and helping fund this, is additional data. So that, we know, from the master plan, that there are needs around affordable housing, that there are needs, that we have a gap And we know from our analysis when we were formed that we have a gap of young professionals, right? That we have a lot of families, we have a lot of seniors, but we're missing that healthy middle
Right.
because we're short of workforce housing.
Right.
Then the senior needs assessment's complete, and we're like, oh, wait a minute. There aren't enough opportunities for the population to age within the community and to downsize.
Right.
And I think I'm hoping that with the data and the work the VHB will do on this plan, that'll inform not just the zoning, the planning department and the planning board and ZBA from zoning and strategic, but give us data in a sense on the balance we should be looking at when we
Right.
look at the work we're doing with respect to affordable, moderate income,
Absolutely.
workforce housing, veteran housing, all of the aspects that we're concerned about, so that, if we're looking at potentially putting up 10 units on a couple properties, how many of those should serve each of those needs to get us started in the right direction?
Absolutely, and the housing production plan will look at all of that data. I think one of the significant parts of it is your population demographics and understanding, the age of the residents and what the trend will be. And that's something that they can produce as part of it, so that you really know, do you need more senior housing? Do you need more, young family housing? They even look at the demographics of the school children, what type of housing you'll need. There is a trend right now of people moving out of the state because of the affordability. So we're actually going down on the number of school children and young families, and it's really because of the affordability factor. People are moving out of Massachusetts altogether. So then you take a look at that and you see, okay, well, we have a lot of seniors here. They're not necessarily leaving the state, so we may need more senior housing. But then on the other part of that, how do you keep people in Massachusetts? And
I think the state obviously is facing that. The current administration is very actively, supporting programs and money to try to fix the affordability problem. I mean, that's the good news. I think one thing to remember, though, is that Westborough, between 2010 and 2020, increased from about 18,000 residents to over 21,000. So I think while overall the state may be losing people because of all the amenities and features of our town, location, great schools, a lot of nice other amenities, there's really been a growth in the town. And there's been, a reasonable amount of new housing, but it's really been rental. There haven't been, any low income, rental unit, or both, either rental or affordable housing,
Right.
Like starter homes,
Right.
workforce housing, been done. So we want to make sure that we are providing people, obviously seniors, to be able to age in the community, and that was part of the senior assessment.
Right, and this will help us understand, by reviewing that data, what type of housing we need, either very low income, moderate, and, for seniors, they really evaluate if there's any seniors on waiting lists also for
Yeah.
housing, things like that, to understand the need for rental housing compared to home ownership.
Right. I think it'll also help because as we go forward in a couple of areas for grants, which, there are programs out there showing, the grant providers that we have our act together, if you will, that we've done our homework, that, we understand what the needs are, and that, and when we do an ask, that it's founded on good data. So that's another benefit I see in this. So
I'm glad you brought that up, because on many of the grant applications, one of the questions to get you a few more points is, do you have a housing production plan?
Right.
And it doesn't matter if you're above or below the 10%, they want to see that effort.
Right.
So I think this will only help us.
Good. All right. Hank?
I've got some areas of specific concern. I mean,
Mhm.
one is, we've built a lot of senior housing.
Mhm.
My guess is we're somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 seniors. A couple of years from now, we may not be there. Last I knew, we were around 3,000, 3,500 seniors in town. Going out 5 years or so, you might hit 5,000. But we just added 700 units over at Chauncey Lake.
Mhm.
We've added, up here at Highlands, we added a bunch of units, I don't know, a couple of 100 units or at least. We've probably added in the last 5 years, 1,000 units
Mm.
with a projected population of 5,000. That's gonna soak up 20%
Mhm.
of the population growth. And, oh, by the way, my numbers are for single people.
Mhm.
If I say that the average senior family is 1.5, something like that,
Mhm.
yeah, maybe we got 3,000 senior families.
Right.
Just kind of really quick back. Oh, by the way, the community clearly has a bias toward building senior housing because seniors don't have kids in school.
Mm.
I mean, you don't have to argue, some folks will argue that, but my personal opinion, observing the behavior, that's a clear bias. I'm concerned that we need to understand what is our future need for additional senior housing beyond what is already either in place or permitted.
Mhm.
Because you gotta worry about permitted, right? That will help guide us as to whether, as we as a housing trust go forward, whether we wanna be putting a lot of emphasis on senior housing or whether we wanna be putting emphasis on some other
Right.
demographic group.
Absolutely.
And that really comes into play, Westborough does, the Highlands has been there over 100 units for more than 10 years.
Yep.
Certainly Pulte's moving forward, they'll
Mhm.
continue to move forward as fast as economically and the market wants them to move forward towards those 700 units. We have, on the back of Ward Hill, up, Orchard Hill area, there's a 55-plus community. We've got several, off there. What was interesting, what we learned with Stagecoach Circle is that 55-plus ownership units that are SHI affordable, we have 3.
Right, no, I understand.
Right, and so, but yes, is that population looking to buy, or would they prefer to rent?
Yes,
And,
Yep.
and what mix should we be thinking of, there? I think it'll all be very valuable to
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, I think that the key is, yes, there's been a lot of
Yeah.
senior housing built, but it doesn't come under the affordable
Yeah, we
structures,
just
and
need to
that's where
understand where the numbers are going, right?
the issue
I
struggles
mean,
with.
I've got some other concerns, again, it's fairly specific. If you look at the under 50% AMI
Mhm.
availability in Westborough, to my knowledge, the only officially recognized housing that meets that criteria is the Housing Authority.
No. Residents at Westborough Station
Oh, okay, residents at.
is
Westborough.
50%
So
AMI.
So if we look at that population, under 50% AMI, do we have more demand in town than the planned available supply? Again, to the best of my knowledge, there's no supply increase coming.
Mm.
There probably should be, but there isn't. So that's a demographic group we need to understand. Is that an area where the community, maybe not the trust, but the community needs to invest?
Okay.
I'm
And-
also sort of interested in what will be the impact? We've done some good work on inclusionary zoning.
Mhm.
In the last couple of years, we've put in place some new zoning laws. That inclusionary zoning over the next 5 years should have a lot of impact. It'd be
Mhm.
really nice to understand what we project that impact will be, and again, on affordability and
Mhm.
aligned with the demographics. And the rent versus own,
Mhm.
particularly amongst the affordable housing. The number that sticks in my head is 7%. Somewhere like 7 to 10% of the affordable housing in town that's on the SHI, I think is ownership housing.
Mm.
That's way out of balance with the community balance.
Mhm.
So kind of understanding where's that going, and can we benchmark that against some goodness criteria, if you will,
Mhm.
to say, is that the right balance? Or do we need to emphasize more rental housing or emphasize more ownership housing in the affordable space, the under 80%
Mhm.
kind of affordable? So
Right.
those are areas where I've got questions. I don't have good data to help guide me. I'd really like to have good data answering those questions, or attempting to help with that
Yeah.
set of policy
So if you're
questions.
interested in just reviewing the data from the 2020 census, Mass Housing Partnership, MHP, put out this program called Data Town.
I can send you the link.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I've been in there.
you can compare communities, but it shows the cost burden
Yep.
for
Yeah.
renters
Good, I'll
compared to
take a look at it, yeah.
owners, and
That'll
even the
cer-
age, the demographics. And,
That'll certainly help us understand how do we compare compared to other options for people who want to stay in this area. I mean, you can stay in, eastern central Massachusetts, eastern Worcester County, without staying in Westborough. So
Right.
there may be places where it's nice to have people stay here, but if they stay in Grafton instead, that's not a big change, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
When-
I think we
okay.
did use Data Town pretty extensively when we put together, before we formed the trust, there was a working group set up. And we, the three of us, plus a couple of other people who are not on the trust now, put together, a lot of the demographics and the housing burden cost, et cetera. So that was a
That's great.
document I gave you, Steve.
Yeah.
But that was using 2010 census data. So
Oh,
now that
okay.
we have the 2020,
Right.
because we did our work during 2020, it'll be good. I'd like to move on since we're
So thank
running
you.
a little over
Yeah,
our
no,
agenda.
So,
no
and
worries.
just, we talked about the money, so
Yes,
the original ask was for 13,800. The trust previously voted to approve up to 15,000.
Okay.
Should the data requests we wanted included impact the cost?
It actually lowered the cost.
Good.
Because you had a lot of the existing data that they needed for it. So it went down to
Okay.
12,975.
Excellent.
Yes, so
Thank
good
you.
work.
all right. So basically, we've already approved sufficient funding to cover
Okay.
that cost of, as you just mentioned. So please proceed. I did talk, well, Leah, before she left, said it would be best if the planning board did, just basically on payments, just put our different Oregon object code. So,
Yes.
when it comes time for the actual payment, it'll be split appropriately, with the finance director.
Yes,
So,
and
with
I
that.
am meeting with the procurement officer later this morning to talk
Good.
about how that all is working, and I did notify the finance director, so.
It would be
we'll work it
helpful
out.
also for them to give us a rough timeframe when they think,
Some idea when they think they're gonna have
when
a-
they'd be able to produce their
an initial
report.
report.
Oh, yes, I know that it should be completed within 6 months.
Okay,
Yeah, okay, so-
But I will, I'm anticipating probably January they would get started.
okay.
There is a time period from the date that we sign the contract.
Sure.
So as soon as we have all the ducks in a row about the finance, just not whether we're financing it, just, figuring out the
Okay.
different accounts.
If
we'll let you
anything
know.
needs to be signed or co-signed or things like that, just give me a holler and we'll
Okay.
take care of it.
That's great.
Thank you very much, Jenny.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, moving on. Our next big item is 7 Lawton's Way. This is, just as we on the board know, this is a house that is over on Lawton's Way, was built in the probably 1990s, and at that point was an affordable unit based upon a program called HOP, H-O-P, that the DHCD at that time was promoting or supporting. I'll say unfortunately, or it's just the nature of that program, was that unlike the current AMI-based affordability metrics and increase in price year over year, or, it's all tied back to current income type levels. This was not. I think this was probably more based on CPI or some other metric that measured, inflation, et cetera. So, as a result, the house is now worth $397,000.
Would you like me to walk through the memo? Would you like me to
Yeah,
walk through the
why
memo?
don't you walk, Alan
Okay, so-
prepared,
So,
a memo so that
So-
we can take some actions.
right. So, as Mr. Brain said, in background, the property is affordable under the Housing Opportunity Program, which set the max resale price as a percentage of a current market rate appraisal. And that percentage is slightly over 67%. So with the last 4 years and home prices growing at a faster rate than normal, the current affordable price for that home would be $396,536. Also recall that the select board previously delegated the town's right to purchase the property to the trust, provided that the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, we'll just abbreviate that to HLC, is unavailable to find an eligible buyer within the 90-day period, and the trust voted to take that action should those conditions occur. HLC notified the trust by email that at the current affordable price, it will be impossible to find an eligible buyer for the property. That current mortgage rates, there's absolutely no way for someone with $75,000 max in assets, in a mortgage in the 5 to 7% range, to be able to get that in a monthly mortgage payment, even with the one mortgage program from MHP, to get that mortgage payment below the 30% of the 80%, right? And so that started the process. To bring the property into compliance with current rules for 80% AMI, under current programs and formula, the max resale price given interest rates this week would be $227,000. So that's a pretty significant gap. An update to where we're at. The trust did contract with, our motion was not just funds to do the purchase, but also related expenses. We used in related expenses, the trust contracted with a certified home inspector and completed an inspection identifying several issues. Our trustee, Mr. Ken Salzman, obtained budgetary estimates for taking all of the corrective actions mentioned in the report. These estimates total about $29,000, including $20,000 to replace the roof. And the assessment that it would be hard to repair the roof, it's really at this point, given the age of the home, a replacement situation. Additionally, HLC suggested that rather than the trust buying the property, effecting repairs, and then turning to sell the property at the new AMI rate, that we simply buy down the property. And what this means is that HLC will market the home at the $227,000 price. The buyer will still receive the full $396,530 affordable value that they're due as owners of the property under the program it's currently in. And that as part of that process, the trust would subsidize that difference, and HLC would contribute $20,000 to subsidize that difference as well. Now, it's important to note that the seller, under the rules of the HOP program and the affordability programs, has the right to sell the property as is, absent any health and safety issues. And because of that, when affordable homes resell, escrow for repairs can be requested, but it's never required. And we're aware that this seller has a home they're looking to buy, and I expect they're rolling over funds that escrow would not be, them providing escrow would not be financially viable. And also step back, sidebar, part of the purpose of affordable housing programs is that people go into an affordable house, and when they can move up to a market rate home, you want them to be able to do that and then have a new home that's affordable to a new family to start them on that way as well, right? So HLC will have the seller make repairs to the health and safety issues. There are some in the home related to some electrical wiring and outlet issues. And HLC will, as this property transfers, update the deed rider to the current standard, which would ensure the house remains at the 80% AMI program level in perpetuity, and that it cannot revert. Under the current program, it can revert to a market rate home. Under this new one, it would never be able to revert to a market rate home. One of the trustees sent me a note asking if we were to buy the property, could we turn and sell it as a moderate income house at 100 to 120% of AMI, no. Because the current deed says it's either affordable or it's market rate. So if we're gonna buy it to keep it affordable, we have to then sell it as an affordable unit.
I thought there had been again, there's been so much literature to read. I remember, I thought they said that it stayed on the SHI even if it went to.
It does, right. So the issue is that if the house goes to market rate,
Yeah,
it will still count as one unit of SHI in
Right.
perpetuity,
But
but it's not actually an affordable unit.
we couldn't put an affordable deed rider at the 100% level.
No.
Okay.
The deed rider either has to stay what it is today at the HOP level,
Yeah.
or it has to move to a current affordable program because it is an affordable house.
Okay, and there's no affordable moderate income housing program at the present time?
Not that would comply with the way
Right.
the property is now.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so,
Just,
no, it was a good question, a
Yeah,
good thought.
it's just,
Right.
I was just hoping it might be an opportunity to make some impact on that moderate income. But it's not gonna work, we can't do it, then I would suggest, I really don't believe we have the resources to be in the business of contracting repairs and selling property.
Right.
And if EOHLC is willing to do that for us,
Yep.
and we pay them, that's a good deal
Yeah,
in my
so,
book.
so let me walk through the options, because we have two options right now. Option one would be to proceed with buying the property as we originally voted at the 396,530, less $20,000 from HLC.
Okay,
Now, that $20,000 would probably come when we go to sell the property, as opposed to when we purchase, but the net would be 376,530. The trust will incur legal and filing fees, both to transfer the property to us and then to generate a P&S, that P&S as well as a P&S for the eventual sale. And we would have carrying costs, insurance, utilities. And even though the trust could sell the property as is, I think my sense of us as trustees, that we would be uncomfortable selling a property knowing that the buyer would then have to step up immediately and put $20,000 into a new roof.
Yep.
And so that's not a viable way. The difference between the selling price and the current maximum resale price and the new resale price at the 80% AMI program level, less the subsidy from contribution from HLC, is $146,530.
I think it's 100.
It's less their 20,000. Okay?
Just to, on that point, I ran some numbers, I think. This is the market, the current market price.
Right.
We have 20,000, if we're selling at 227,
Right.
I believe we need that amount.
Oh, 149?
149.
Okay, I'll make that
536.
correction. 149, 530.
yeah, I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
I might suggest that these numbers are gonna change every day, because
Yeah, yeah.
the only number
Yeah.
that doesn't change is the maximum resale price.
Is
All
the
other
current,
na-
right.
All the other numbers change every time.
Until there's
the interest
a
rate
mortgage
changes.
commitment, until there's a
Right.
lock-in on the mortgage
Right,
interest rate.
and mortgage rates are changing
Yeah,
more
multiple times.
frequently than daily.
Yes.
That's right.
And so with the, with the purchase of the property, the trust would need to decide whether or not to spend additional funds on repairs. Option two is the buy down. HLC will market the property at the 80% AMI affordable price of $227. At closing, HLC will contribute $20,000, and the trust will contribute the balance of the difference
Yep.
as subsidy to buy down the rate. And HLC is paying the 2% marketing sales commission to the agent they've
Okay.
contracted with to sell the property. The seller still receives the current max resale price is required.
Yep.
The trust in this option incurs no carrying costs or legal filing fees.
Right.
So one of the considerations, well, allowed under the Affordable Housing Program rules, I feel it would be better not to saddle a new affordable homeowner with a major repair, or the full cost of that major repair being the roof. And therefore, my suggestion is that when we originally looked at this property, we were looking at a subsidy of $156,000. And so my suggestion is we approve an allocation of $155,000 for a buy down contingent on EOHLC providing a new deed rider that ensures the property remains an SHI certified affordable unit in perpetuity at the 80% AMI standard, and further stipulate that the trust will hold any difference between the $155,000 and the actual buy down subsidy at closing, if any, for 180 days as a matching grant to repair or replace the roof.
Okay. So, right, so the house will be sold with an agreement to repair the roof.
The
Or to
house will be sold,
Right.
right?
And the buyer will be.
We'll subsidize the buy down.
Right,
If the buyer moves to repair or replace the roof within 6 months,
right.
we will have some funds set aside to assist with that cost.
Okay.
So they would repair the roof or contract to do that. We would then, upon their completion of fixing the roof, we would give them, or the roofer more directly.
So, I mean, EOHLC won't take on the responsibility of getting the repairs done.
No,
Okay, that's
no,
fine. I just,
they won't.
Not at this
And-
point, to
and
try
they-
to close in
and-
reasonable time.
This property, there isn't a program that applies to this property for an EOHLC grant for the roof.
yeah,
There's the possibility that they could get a 0%, zero amortization loan that's due on sale of the property for the roof cost. What would happen is the cost of roof repair would be built in to the future resale price,
yep,
right? As a capital improvement and a capital maintenance to the property. So eventually, the buyer would get it back
yep.
on resale, but that could be 5,
Yeah,
10,
it'd be
15,
30
20 years
from
away.
now.
Right.
I understand,
So,
that's a,
so that's sort of the history where we're at, the analysis. The MCO is ready to pull the trigger on the marketing today. They believe they'll have an eligible buyer within a few days.
like a week, yeah,
Oh.
less, right?
Yeah, very quickly.
Stagecoach Circle. I open my email and Ed's like, the posters are up at the library and the senior center. And the next email was, take down the posters, we found an eligible buyer. It's like, by the time we could drive around town and put them up.
I mean, I was looking at their website and stuff, doesn't, I mean, at the price you're talking, this won't last for
No.
5 minutes.
No.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure
So,
it is.
so MCO is confident, they can move.
Yeah.
Would it
I
make
think-
any-
I think the
would it
way-
make any sense to put it in to make sure that EOHLC or MCO puts in the PNS with the new owner that they will repair the roof?
You can't require that.
Can't require that as a, okay,
There are general requirements for affordable housing that you maintain it, and
Yeah.
it sort of falls under that, but
I mean,
they have there's a standard pro forma PNS.
I mean, I assume we would, I mean, the mortgage holder will probably want to require that anyway, if they see the home,
Yeah.
if they see the report. I mean, I assume that's public record, right?
Well, we did do.
Yeah, the-
We had a home inspection
Inspection
done.
This is,
report.
that's
so
home
this
inspection.
is, our home inspection report
Is-
has been provided to HLC and the listing agent.
Right.
It would
That's
be
great.
part of any disclosure.
And the
Part of
buyer,
disclosure.
the buyer
And
could
The
use
buyer will
this.
know,
And the
and
advantage to the buyer
And when they go
is-
for a mortgage, the mortgage lender will know, and the mortgage lender
Right.
can make a decision as to whether they want to force the issue.
Right, and,
That's
the, I guess there's a benefit to the buyer. The buyer can choose whether to hire their own inspector or to use our report.
Yeah,
So it might have just saved the buyer a couple $100.
most buyers will probably just use our report.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And often, and
500
oftentimes,
and some odd
and oftentimes affordable units on resale, there is no home inspection.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Because it's as is.
I
and,
understand. No, it was right.
and they deal with
Get an
it.
inspector in and look
I-
at it. I wasn't sure about the roof.
I prefer this option 2 because it's just simpler for us.
Yep.
We cut a check or do a money transfer at time of closing to the appropriate, to the seller. It's just much cleaner, EOHLC, MCL deal with all the ins and outs. And how I perceive this is, for $155,000, we're buying a home, an affordable home. Now, to build the equivalent would cost a lot more. So
I agree,
that's,
but I believe option two is the right way to go. I'm just thinking about executing it. Do we need to have some kind of a written intermunicipal agreement or a written
No,
agreement between us and EOHLC?
Our vote is sufficient documentation. HLC will provide us with a letter
Okay, so they'll give us the
There
letters
is-
that.
that
with
we're
their-
participating.
With their commitment, okay.
Yeah, with their commitment.
Again, I'm not, I have every reason to believe that they're honest, but
Yeah.
I'm from the.
trust but verify.
Trust but
Verify
verify
school.
I think that's the Reagan
So-
school.
Yeah,
So-
that's a Reagan school, yeah.
So I had, I mistyped 146 instead of 149.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so based on the 146, I was thinking 155 would be a good number, because that would leave us,
Yep.
somewhere in the $8,000 to $10,000 range
Yep.
for that subsidy. If it's, given that it's 149,
Maybe 170.
do you want to make that 155, 160?
Sure.
I think a 160.
160?
If-
Okay.
Basically, that gives us about 10K,
Right, which would be about half the cost.
which would be the half the cost.
that.
And, there seems to be, for the house, there was original discussion about, it'd be about 10K. After Ken had done
Yeah.
some work, he says that was probably because people were doing shingles over existing shingles,
And they
which
can't
he
do
says
that.
is not a good idea.
And they can't, and
And
No,
as a
you gotta
result,
strip-
they're probably
You gotta-
closer to
You
20K.
gotta strip it and you gotta, yeah, 20K
Make
is
sure
about the
there's
right
no-
number.
Between
So-
15 and
for a
20K.
roof.
And so we modify that to be 160.
160.
And just note that when we first looked and started doing the analysis on the property, we were expecting a subsidy in the 169 to 175 range.
Right.
So we're coming
So
in
we're in a sweet spot.
responsible. We're in a sweet spot.
All right,
would you like-
Will we accept option, that we authorize the chair to execute on?
You
option
actually
two?
have a
Actually,
draft
I-
motion, as
I have
always.
I have a draft motion. It's a little involved.
Super.
There's
So
no. I
why
need a
don't
glass
you
of
go
water
with
to go
that
with
draft
this.
motion?
So I move to, one, authorize the allocation of up to $160,000 to help buy down the maximum resale price MRP of the property at 7 Lawton's Way from the current MRP of $396,536 to the 80% AMI MRP of $227,000, as will be adjusted based on the locked-in mortgage interest rate, provided that A, the buyer pays the 80% AMI MRP of $227,000 is adjusted for the mortgage interest rate. B, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, EOHLC, contributes $20,000 to the buy-down. And C, EOHLC provides a new affordable deed rider for the property that ensures the unit remains an SHI-compliant affordable unit in perpetuity at the 80% AMI program level standard. 2, stipulate that the trust's actual buy-down, that if the trust's actual buy-down is less than $160,000, the trust will hold these remaining funds for 180 days to assist the buyer with the repair or replacement of the roof. And 3, authorize the chair or the chair's designee to execute any necessary related documents with advice of counsel.
Need a second? Any discussion?
Just one more random question.
Yes.
Is there any downside to going down this path? Is there a homeowners association or anything like that?
No.
This is a subdivided plot of land, so it's a.
Correct.
It's a
Okay.
single-family home on a
It's
single-family
home
lot.
on a single-family lot, and it's tied to town water and sewer kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Correct.
Super.
Yeah, they have both.
I was
And
pretty
they
sure
have-
that
they
was the
have
case,
gas
but
for,
I wasn't 100% sure, and, always look for. what
right,
could
and
go- what could go wrong.
it's also serviced by gas, so.
Yeah, so, yeah.
It's a great starter home, I
Yep,
mean, in a
it's
nice
nice-
neighborhood.
Nice place, good neighborhood, yeah.
With that, okay. I have no other comments, so, you ready for a vote? All those in favor of the motions on table?
Okay. I will notify MCO and
And
HLC immediately following the meeting.
Right.
I suspect they'll have a showing later today.
The what?
They might have a showing as soon as this afternoon.
Yeah, they might.
Okay.
We'll see that. So I did give I happened to be in Town Hall yesterday. I met with Jason Little, who's our finance director, and did give him a heads up on that we're going to need to do some transfer. I thought it may be sooner, but we did get a timeline on the from MCO of what they anticipate.
Right.
And the closing will probably happen in February.
Oh, okay. So
With
it's
their
a little
marketing
later
and
than I
PNS
thought, yeah, but
back.
time you get involved with the attorneys
Right,
and draw up.
and the
all your
attorneys, et
bills
cetera,
Some-
et cetera.
yeah.
I mean,
So,
if you close in 60 days, that's a miracle.
yeah, that's
But-
basically what
And
they're
I know they're
looking.
working to expedite that because the seller has a home he's looking to purchase
Yep, no, we'll do what
and
we can.
is going to need to move that closing date. to make
Okay,
that
good.
happen. Okay.
All right, we're still, all right, moving on. We're running a little behind schedule, so I think I'm probably going to drop one of these. But anyhow, 6 Beach Street and 45 High Street. Hank, you want to talk about those two properties and Waterman's Associates?
I'll put them up.
Yeah, I mean, High Street, I mean, we had we've been looking at the options. We got 2 options.
Can we do Beach Street?
You want to do Beach Street first? Okay, I mean, Beach Street, Waterman has given us 2 options
I'll pull them up.
for how, I mean, and there's probably more options, but there's 2 interesting options for what could be done on Beach Street. My only concern, I mean, there's lots of issues that have to be worked and sorted out as to how you permit it and what you can really do there and such. But it's feasible to put multiple units on the Beach Street property. They've shown us 2 ways. There's probably a couple of more ways. The key issue is both of those options require that we negotiate with the owner of the
Beaumont.
Westborough Station, I guess they call it.
No, it's
Whatever.
Westborough,
Yeah, the apartments on Beach Street.
the apartments
Apartments
that
on the
are
Beach- the
on the
apartments on
corner
Beach
of Beach
Street.
and Beaumont.
We would need to negotiate a emergency vehicle right away across through their parking lot to, probably, again, we're not 100% sure we'd have to do that.
Okay.
I mean, the WDA has suggested that, fire department and such, police department, whatever, might want an emergency vehicle access right away. We need to go have to understand whether that can be done.
Okay. So this is the current property as it stands. And here is the first concept
Yeah,
Right,
that Hank was talking about. That is 2 duplexes, 2 freestanding, or leaving the existing home as is up front,
yep,
an existing garage. So this would be adding 5, 1,200, approximately 1,200 square foot, 2-bedroom homes.
yep.
Okay, with compliant parking. Given the density, there need to be storm infiltration for stormwater management. And we would need a common septic system for those 5 new units in the back.
Right, unless the timing worked that we were able to permit them for sewer.
Right,
Because there's sewer that are available out there that,
right,
when the time comes, we may be able to permit sewer, who knows?
right.
yeah,
Okay.
if the, actually, I meant to ask Jenny, but apparently they were going to get the credit or some report back from DEP.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's some motion, we should hear something in the
Very,
first
very near
quarter,
future,
yeah.
before end of year.
Yeah.
It may still take a while to
yeah.
get the credit sorted out, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. So,
So-
but apparently there's some major
Okay,
milestone that will get
My
reported.
belief is that the town will have an answer on what the answer is on the sewers before we're able to get through the feasibility cycle with these 2 properties. And it's gonna take us, my guess is take us a year to get through the feasibility cycle and to the point where we're where we're issuing RFPs. And in that period of time, we'll know what the answer is about sewer. We may not like it, but we'll know what it is.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I guess my suggestion, based on what I've heard, is we proceed assuming septic,
Okay,
and that should sewer become available,
Right, then we
it's
change
always
our
easy to
mind.
say, don't dig. And pull it out of the budget, right?
yep, I understand.
But if when we, because we start looking at financing and subsidies, doing this as well. So this is one concept.
Septic would be the most expensive, so that's the way to go to proceed.
So when I look at this design and the next one, I've got a couple of comments
Yep.
and like to make requests back to Waterman. Here's a second concept that would actually replace the existing home up front. Pull down the garage, have 2 outdoor spaces, and then a slightly different configuration, 3 duplexes in the back. Again, 2-bedroom, 1,200 square foot, 2-story units. With parking that meets full current ratio zoning requirements. And so in both of these plans, we have the option of requesting a reduction in parking for more green space if we wanted to, if you felt that would work, given that guest parking, one side of Beach Street is available for public parking for guests as it is. When I look at these diagrams, it's not shown here, but when we look under by the septic area in that drive, there's currently, I believe, a fence and bushes to provide privacy behind number 8 Beach Street. I'd want to make sure that we ensure that there's landscaping and fencing so that 8 isn't looking out of their back or feeling that there's homes looking into the back of his house 24 hours
Yep.
a day.
Yep,
A little concerned that the septic is under a driveway, because at some point in time, that system might need work, and that makes repairs extremely expensive. And I do believe we should approach the owners of the apartment complex sooner rather than later about the concept of an easement for emergency access, for gated access to their property for emergency vehicles. I would also be interested in seeing a plan that didn't necessarily require that.
okay. What I'm gonna suggest is that if the trust is comfortable, I'll find out who the owner is and make contact and say, hey, we're looking at developing the adjacent property, would they be willing to would they be willing to enter into negotiations of an easement for emergency vehicles?
Right.
Just at least sense that out, and if they
Sure.
say yes, then we do whatever, we probably engage the attorney and all that stuff.
Yeah.
If they say, hey, I'm not even gonna talk to you,
Yeah.
then we come back and say, okay, we need options where we can't do, when we
Right.
don't have that
Yeah.
access.
Yeah, there's some-
I have the contact information in our SHI list.
Okay,
So you can,
so I would go do
Right.
that over the next, won't be able to do anything till January, but because of the holidays, nobody will talk to you till the holidays are over, but.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, reach out now, set up a time.
Right, and I would
Yeah.
also suggest that I schedule time with the one-stop shop folks to hey, take these 2 concept drawings and say, we're looking at developing the property, we understand it's all non-conforming. We would go 40B, probably.
Friendly, hopefully friendly
Go through a
40B.
friendly
Friendly
40B
40B.
exercise. What would you like to see, what are your comments? What are your concerns? What would you like to see us do? Would you support us? Will you support us or not support us in going that path?
Right.
And quite honestly, I would suggest we take both proposals at the same time.
When
Or-
you say
or
both,
take-
yes.
Take High Street and this was, hey, we've got 2 pieces
Yes.
we're working on.
Right.
Let them make the decision. Do you want to, in one meeting, do you want to try and deal with both of them? Or do you want to deal with them in separate consecutive meetings, but kind of go to them with the proposals and get as much feedback as we can?
Okay.
And I'm debating whether we ought to invite WDA's engineer to go with us. I think we probably should. We'll have to pay for that,
Yeah.
but capture the concerns and issues firsthand, as opposed to
Yes.
me and Ed or me and you trying to pass it on, right?
I think having a technical expert there is appropriate.
Yep.
The other thing I would suggest is that, I know the owner of 8 Beach has reached out to us,
Yep.
that, Ed, that you or I sent him an email to let him know.
Chris.
Yeah,
Yeah. I've
just
been-
let him know this was discussed, and we'll let him know once it's posted, he can take a look at it.
Yep.
That these are, these are concepts that we understand the development of this land. It has an impact on him. And, we've already identified additional landscaping and fencing to protect his privacy as well. But that, obviously, he may have concerns that we would want to discuss.
Yeah, with that
Before we get to the place where we formally have to notify all of the abutters.
Right.
Since he has particular interest and he's sort of locked in by what we do. We're his neighbor on
I mean,
his
I
side.
would
of
also
that.
suggest that either in January or February, we find actually, I think Jennifer's probably the right person, our planner. Find someone to help us, educate us a bit as to how we will proceed, what are the options are to proceed with EOHLC in terms of getting, you gotta file for an LIP, I call it LIP status, they call it something else, but ask Jennifer to help us understand what we have to do, and in preparing that filing, either January or February, come and talk to us about it.
Yeah, I've always spoken about the need for that kind of technical assistance.
I mean,
So,
I know I've read the documentation, I know what it takes to do an LIP. I don't know what it takes to do one in a friendly 40B environment that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I think it's somewhat different, but I don't know. So and we might as well get the staff involved, because we're not gonna do it ourselves.
Right.
It is
Okay.
far more complicated than what we can do in our spare time.
Okay, sounds good. 45 High Street Extension.
Yep.
So this picture was the original concept we
Yep.
received.
Yep.
That was previously discussed for 4 units. The assumption here is septic as well.
Yep.
For wastewater. Given that this property's been vacant, we don't know if there's a sewer allocation. If there is, at most it would be
For a single-family home.
for a single-family
Yeah.
home, potentially 4 bedroom,
Yeah.
even if it's was for 4 bedrooms, that only gets us halfway there.
That doesn't even
Um,
break the surface.
So we asked about more green space in the middle.
Yep.
And Waterman Design came back with a second plan, again, 4 units. This is 2, at the bottom, you'll see there's 2 perpendicular parking areas to the street. That's sort of, typically the town doesn't love that, but this is within the way, because it's split into 2. And then there's a pathway, part concrete, gravel, when they decide to do it all paved.
Yep.
That would be accessible should fire apparatus need to enter into the property. It's wide enough to support the ladder truck, so that the ladder truck can get close enough to any building to provide safe access to the roof for firefighters. The septic system ends up as part of the fill,
Yep.
which gives us the ability, we just pick the materials we need to fill the big hole in the center of the property so that the septic drains appropriately, which is always a good thing.
Yeah.
Makes that actually easier to accomplish, and we move the wetlands from an isolated wetland to a bordering wetland, which is actually preferable.
Right.
There's a benefit to doing that. I mean,
There's a benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm confident that the Conservation Commission will allow us to do that. I'm not sure we'll be happy about what it costs.
We'll see.
But
We'll see.
we'll see. You don't know until you,
We don't know until we
well,
don't know.
you can
until-
dig out that area and move that fill to where we need it.
well,
And all of a sudden-
we're assuming that the fill would be, would be considered acceptable. I think it probably will be, but not having any borings done, I'm not, I mean.
We could also get some beavers. We were talking about that earlier. There's a beaver problem at one of our
Hey,
scout
the
camps.
other
and-
suggestion I have
Yeah.
about this property is that since we're gonna be going pretty public with our concepts for development, the trust ought to just contact the recreation director and advise them that we are going forward, and if they have any,
So the recreation director's aware, and I
Okay.
can look back with her and the rec commission.
just.
I'll take that action item.
Because at one time, they had some conversations about building a playground in this area
Right.
that they hadn't really pursued. I don't believe they'd pursued
Right.
them because they thought the expense would be far beyond what they wanted to.
I'm not sure that was the issue. I think there were a few members of the community who were thinking that could be a good location for a playground. And they were asked to go get,
Yeah.
put together a community group to sort of lead the effort and guide it.
And they really-
And that, for, I don't know why or how, didn't fully materialize, so it sort of hasn't been discussed since then. But, given that this is a piece of town-owned property, we can certainly go before the one-stop shop without having
Oh,
control of the
absolutely.
property and move it.
Yep.
We'll get to a certain point, particularly where it would be beneficial for the trust to have control of
Yep.
the property. And so this is actually, can I move on to the next item on the agenda?
Yep,
Ed?
please do.
So,
The art,
yeah,
the
so,
article.
so one of the thoughts,
Yeah.
and this was suggested by Hank, is that for annual town meeting in March, we ask the town to transfer the property to the trust for the purpose of continuing to pursue the concepts. And so what I've done is I've drafted a warrant article that would be, that we can, I'll read today, we can discuss it more at our next meeting. And get final wording for it, then that's within the time frame necessary to have it be on the warrant for March. And it's to see if the town shall authorize the select board to transfer the property at 45 High Street Extension, Westborough Assessor Parcel ID 271710, and filed at the Worcester County Registrar of Deeds on book page 3171-93. To the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust, known as the Trust, for the purpose of permitting and development of affordable and moderate income housing, and further authorize the select board to rescind the transfer if either the trust fails to obtain an appropriate permit, defined as an approval not required plan, site plan, or special permit issued by the planning board, or special permit or comprehensive permit issued by the zoning board of appeals, within a reasonable time period to be determined by the select board, or 3, if the select board identifies a preferable municipal use for the property prior to the trust obtaining an appropriate permit. The select board may act under this article, provided the trust shall pay for all costs to prepare and file any necessary documents related to the transfer of the property to and/or from the trust. And so basically what we're saying is, we're asking the town meeting to authorize the select board to give us control of the property, because hopefully at that point, we'll be at a point where we need control to start going for grants
Anything.
and financing for a project, or to move forward, or prepare bid-ready documents, anything along those lines, to actually talk about going before the zoning board or starting the permit process. It's better if we have control of the property, so that if not us, the town would have to do that for us.
Yeah, we
Which
don't wanna
isn't-
try and do that.
And so, but also saying that, we want to move forward, but we understand that the town might still say, wait a minute, there's a municipal use.
Right.
Stop what you're doing, we'll give that opportunity. Or if we're like, okay, the permit's not going to work out, then the property doesn't stay with the trust, it goes back to the town if the town wants it.
I think this gives us, the select board, a level of comfort that, this is not one and done, that there are contingencies.
Right.
That they can, either can exercise proactively, or if we fail to act, that it will revert back. So I think it's inappropriate, and I don't know if we need to have a motion, but I would move that we ask Mr. Edinburgh to proceed with getting this article as
Yeah, we
more
don't need
or
a
less
motion
as
for that.
written,
The next step would be
to
give it to town council to tune up and provide a heads up to the town manager and the
yes,
select board.
right.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, I think exactly what you said, that the board authorize you to proceed
Okay,
with this. So
Yep.
I
So,
have a
second.
motion, second, favor?
Yep.
Okay, go for it, Alan. As far as I know, I don't think, obviously, town meeting's a little bit away yet, but I don't anticipate that we'll have any other articles that we'll need to put on the,
Well, I don't know if there's anything we have to do to transfer money from Pulte or not, but
we can look at that
we can ask.
and bring it forward in January. I mean,
yeah, it's just.
I think right now with the money we have, the money we're spending,
We got more money than we can spend in the next year.
yeah, the 900,
Well,
900.
from the Highlands,
The recent settlement with Highlands is $950,000, that's in the bank.
Yeah, we don't.
you
we're
know,
not-
that's restricted in what we can do with it.
Right, that's only senior,
Right, so,
senior housing.
so I'm not sure we need an additional allocation at this point. But should that appear, or there's an opportunity to do something, then we could,
Okay.
right?
Why don't we move on? I think we're set with the,
Yeah, 3 Baylor.
right. So Baylor, what basically summary was, after discussions with MCO regarding the issues of the oil spill and with their construction loan, the bank that would give them their construction loan having some concerns, it was decided that the best thing to do would be a subsurface subsurface
Core drills.
soil
Soil
analysis.
sample, right.
Right, and that was scheduled for them to do they would have to bore through the current slab to get to it. And Hank, you were there.
They did 2 borings
Yep,
in areas adjacent to where the oil burner is. And they said it would take, that was like last Thursday?
last week, yep.
And said it would take a week or 10 days to get the answers back.
Okay, so,
So we should soon have answers as to what they found.
right, so as soon as we get that, I'll get that out to everybody, their report out to everyone. And we do have, I don't think we've allocated any money if we need to do some remediation or to discuss with MCO if that would be part of their removing the current slab.
Well,
Right, so that,
However
it'll
we need
really
to
depend
do,
on what the
we-
report, really it'll depend on what the report says and
Yes.
what the MCO's lender
Yes, what they,
chooses,
what
what they
they're,
prefer to do, or what
Right.
they feel is necessary given the report.
yep, okay,
And
so,
so background on this, just, you know, nothing's easy. So the first rule is, you know, nothing's easy normally when you buy, sell property, right? Nothing's easy for municipal action, given the rules to protect the public's money and the public trust. You put those things 2 together, and nothing's easy, right? So it turns out in 2004, there was a significant oil spill. Basically, they
250 gallons.
they replaced the tank and never capped the old line to the old tank. So when they filled the new tank and then turned on the furnace, the oil went out of the tank, through the furnace, and out into the ground where the old tank used to be. It was cleaned up. Mass DEP supervised it. They did remove liquid from the ground. They actually did, given the water table, they did groundwater testing. And then they treated the soil to accelerate the decomposition of any residual. Fast forward to we are now, the buyer's lender is concerned that the DEP report doesn't actually specify how deep they went. And so they are concerned that there still might be residual. We engaged a company to go do a physical inspection. They recommended the samplings.
Tie and bond is.
Tie and bond, saying they're a licensed site professional, they do this work. That's their livelihood, that's their bread and butter, their expertise. They said the bank's concern would be that with the decomposition, if it hasn't progressed enough, there could be a fume issue, given that, you know, we are only removing part of that part of the foundation to redo another slab. That there's no digging, you know, we're not digging a 4-foot foundation, need to go 8 feet down into the ground for footings, right? Or 6 feet down. We're going a couple feet down for slab on grade. So the question is, would there be a need for a vapor barrier or some possible additional soil replacement? That's the purpose of this. We'll know in 10
Yep.
days, then we can.
Yeah, if I don't hear by mid-next week,
follow
I'll
up.
give Todd a call
Yeah, ring their check.
and at T&B to get us the result, because sooner we know, the better. Because this has been lingering a while. We've been in, the RP's been agreed to, but the actual PNS, which obviously will need to be,
PNS hasn't been executed.
has not been executed
Right.
because this
We've
is still an outstanding
And we're
issue.
working with the understanding that this is an issue that requires time
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
for the PNS. And
and
MCO is still committed to do the project, we're still committed to do the project.
We're probably looking at executing the PNS end of January or something like that.
If-
Hopefully sooner than that.
depends on how this goes. As
You
soon as
understand,
we get, I mean, the only outstanding issue is this, as far as, you
Yeah,
know,
this
all the
is-
numbers, all the other money numbers are all agreed to. The PNS has been agreed to, you know, on both sides, with both councils, so
And the
it
lender-
merely comes down to
The lender
deciding.
could say, fine, we're good, go ahead. The lender could say, fine, go ahead, but we want an LSP to monitor the project.
Yep.
Or the lender could say, we're not gonna loan the money unless you do X.
Right,
And in which case, we'd write the fact that the trust will pay for whatever X is into the PNS. Any additional remediation would be better, is gonna be much less expensive after the foundation's removed.
yes.
So we want to treat it as part of the project, we would
Right, as opposed to doing
basically
it beforehand.
increase our
Oh, yeah, no,
project
right,
subsidy to
absolutely.
cover that
That's
cost,
the way to do it.
Yep.
and satisfy the lender requirements.
Okay.
It's unexpected, it's unfortunate, but it's the world we live in, unfortunately.
Okay. Moving on, we have our first-time homebuyers program update
Okay.
and next steps.
So
and-
exciting stuff here, okay? No, okay, exciting for me because I'm a bit of a wonk. One, Ed put together a really cool brochure, so he'll pass that out to see. But Kate Storm and I met with Metro West Collaborative Development. One, to get feedback on the program, and two, to discuss how the program might be administered and how they might, and whether or not they'd be willing to do this. They are interested,
Good.
they appear to be willing, they're interested. They did provide some feedback on the program, so the draft that was in the packet is draft 3 of the program.
Okay.
We made some changes, I'll cover those very quickly here. One, they noted that a lot of the programs we looked at have been upping the grant amount from 20 to 25,000.
Right.
There are new programs that are in development that are looking at 50, 60,000 in certain communities. So Kate and I discussed it, and we decided that 25,000 is probably a better way to go. It still keeps us, I think it still keeps us within our original estimated budget of 150,000 in grants. That would still be 6 grants. The type of assistance, they were fine with.
The three, the grant, the
Yeah,
forgivable.
they looked at that, and said it's a
deferred
very,
loan,
they
and-
actually
and the
said
delivery.
it's a really creative solution with a couple of changes. One, if part of our eligibility requirement says it doesn't matter if you have owned a home in the last 3 years, if a member of the household's 55 plus, which is typical for most of these programs, right?
Yeah.
They said, if you're talking about selling a house to a senior, waiting 5 years to start the payback of the loan is a long time. What they recommended was starting the payback sooner or starting, I'm sorry, not the payback, the forgiveness.
The forgiveness, right? yeah.
Starting the forgiveness of the loan a little
Yep.
bit sooner.
Yep,
Better serves the population we're looking to serve. So having taken the loan, the deferred payment loan up to 25,000, we've reset the table where forgiveness starts
Year 5.
after 3 years of ownership,
Oh.
And is
I'm sorry.
is complete after 10 years. This is draft 3 that was in the packet.
Okay, I thought that's what I had printed here. I'm still showing year 5.
Okay, I think you have, because that's the 20,000, right?
No, this is 25.
Okay, that's draft 2.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so
This starts in
I
year
can
3.
put it up if you want. Let me,
That, yeah,
Yeah, you were putting
I
it
thought
up
this
there.
was what was in the packet.
do you have,
somehow I didn't get the packet, I don't know.
okay,
why.
okay.
All right. So it starts year 3. Although I would expect that.
Right,
this-
so
yeah,
this
go
is,
ahead.
this is a slightly different schedule of amount forgiveness.
Okay.
One of the concerns with deferred payment loan forgiveness is those forgivenesses is income. And if you're helping someone who's at the lower end of the income schedule, that additional income may or may not, hopefully it doesn't, but it might make them ineligible for other benefits and
Yep.
services they're receiving.
Yep.
So this actually lowers the annual forgiveness, except for the last year, down to 3,500, down to 3,000 from the prior 3,500, reducing that risk. It just spreads it out over a longer period of time. The other feedback.
So instead of 3,500 a year, which is
It's
what
three-
the
it's
old
three-
schedule was.
It's $3,000 a year, except the last year it's $4,000.
Fine,
And
okay.
once they've been in the home 10 years, there's no loan outstanding anymore.
Mhm.
So that's for the forgivable deferred payment loan.
And it's, I'm sorry, it ends at year 10?
It ends at the end of year 10, 10 years
Okay.
of residency. The other,
I'll get the latest, so
Yeah.
that sounds good.
okay, the other component that they said when it came to eligibility is we have tiers of the program at 80% AMI, 100 and 120.
Mm-hmm.
Their feedback was keeping the asset requirement at 75,000
Yeah,
at all three of those tiers will make it very difficult for anyone at 100 or 120% of
Yep.
AMI to qualify.
Yep.
So they suggested scaling. And so Kate and I discussed it, and we're scaling, maintain the 75% asset requirement that's compliant for SHI at 80%, bring that to 112,500
yep,
at 100 and 150,000 at 120%. Right?
Okay.
Now, if someone is 55 or older, we would add $300,000 to that because that covers the protected equity of the homesteading if they've had a house in the past.
Right.
Right? As an
Most
asset.
likely, this is designed, I would expect the users of this would tend to be younger, individuals
But we
or
have, but we
families.
have
We're
a,
offering it for an
but
over
we have-
55 population, they're not gonna
Right.
be younger, right?
well, no, we're not targeting, but as with most of the programs we've looked at across the state, the definition of a first-time home buyer says you haven't owned a home within the last 3
3
years
years.
Yeah.
by the date of closing on this purchase, unless certain conditions apply. And then we don't care if you've owned a home.
Right.
If you're divorced, if you're a single parent, if you were living with a partner who owned a home, or if a member of the household's 55 plus.
Yep.
We also looked at that and decided to add, or if you're a veteran eligible for VHA, for veteran
Veterans, VHA loan.
VA
right?
benefits,
Yeah, VA benefits, okay.
right?
Oh, great.
And so what we're gonna say is that, hey, if you're a veteran and you owned a home 2 years ago, you can still move into the program even though you're within that 3-year window, right? We still wanna, make that available.
Is there a citizenship requirement? It's just probably just a resident alien, I mean,
Yeah.
you're not gonna get a mortgage if you're not a resident alien.
Yeah, you have to be able to obtain a mortgage,
Right, yeah,
so,
so, okay, I just,
yeah, there's
just
no
thinking, we have
citizen.
a-
You have to be a legal resident to get a
We-
mortgage, so you'd have to be a
Right, so-
legal resident, whether
Yeah.
that's citizen or
Right.
visa or green card.
Yeah. We have a
Um,
reasonably large, not native-born population,
Yeah.
so.
And
Immigrant
this has to be, the deferred payment loan becomes immediately due
Yep.
if it's not your primary
Primary resident, right,
residence.
so if you try and rent the house
So
out.
someone who's here on a work visa,
Yep,
technically they could apply, but
But
it
they're
wouldn't be a
not
good
gonna get
move
one.
because if at the end of the work visa they leave,
but, right.
they owe us the money right immediately, right?
Yeah.
And so even if they wanted to hold on to the property as an investment,
That's
so it really comes to play there. So we made those changes to the document. Next step.
I
they wanted-
just have one
Yep, one
point. It is also the income limits. We may want to phrase this, because obviously we're using the 2023 numbers. We may want to put in here, this is subject to change, or
Yeah, we'll note that.
that this is as of the
We'll make it clear
2023.
that these are the current numbers.
Right.
These will be updated annually as HUD
Right,
publishes their.
publishes, right.
Publishes the income numbers. And then, so next step is,
The only other thing I had was calculating the income, and I had made this as a note on my edited version, was that a simpler way is just to use an AGI and, which incorporates all these items listed, these listed on Schedule 1.
Yeah, so, I asked about that. There's
Yeah.
actually,
The only thing that's not is Social Security may need to be added back in if it's not taxed, the non-taxable amount.
So there are reasons why those things are listed
Yeah.
explicitly, in part because the IRS can change the definition of AGI, and we may not want to change our criteria with it.
Okay.
And it also is explicit so people understand, know what part of the income is considered. There will be decisions about assets and what assets we ask. So, for example, certain government programs look at every available asset, is the way the regulations were written. Like, if you own a cemetery plot, it's an asset, right? I don't think we want to go there. Where it really gets tricky is...
I don't want to go there yet.
Right, good point. Where it really gets tricky is when you talk about 401k,
Yep.
other retirement programs, and pensions.
Yep.
Some of those programs have mechanisms to borrow. Some have penalty-free cash-out components at certain levels. And so there is variance between the programs. Some say, you know what, we're not going to worry
Okay, so
about...
they
we're not gonna worry
suggested
about.
we
Let me
enumerate.
finish. Some programs say we're not going to worry about qualified retirement plans. Others say you must provide the usable component of a retirement plan. Some says that that's money you can withdraw without penalty, and some say that's money you can withdraw even though you'll pay a penalty, but not incur interest. So you wouldn't say, we consider the asset the amount you're gonna borrow that you'd have to pay back to that fund, but we would consider an emergency usable asset that you could withdraw it even though you're gonna pay a penalty. And the amount we'd consider is that withdrawal less the penalty you have to pay. That is a really good representation of all available assets. It is incredibly hard to calculate, right? And it puts a huge burden. So as we move further in the process, because the next step is, Metro's Collaborative Development said the next best step is to draft the application. And we've got great templates to use.
Do they have some templates, or
We already
places?
have samples from
Right.
5 or 6 other communities. Draft an application and define the process. And then as we refine that, we can refine that aspect of the program rules.
Okay.
And come to a decision. It's really how much, one of the things that, from Metro West's view, is the simpler the application process and paperwork is, the less expensive it is to administer.
Sure.
Chasing down retirement plans for if they withdraw this amount, how much is the penalty gonna be, takes a lot of effort. And the applicants are gonna need help doing that. Simpler rules, less administration, lower cost, better experience for the people we're helping. So we'll make those decisions. So the next step will be for us to get them a draft application.
Okay.
They'll provide feedback on it. They will also use that to give us a statement of work and an estimated cost.
Okay, good.
That will let us know if this is something we need, administration of the program is something we need to go out to bid for. And if we do, they would bid.
So, I mean, to me, it's time for what in the engineering world we call a rapid prototype.
Yeah,
I mean, time to do a rapid prototype, make the application, get MC,
Yeah.
the Collaborative Development, look at it, and
MHP.
oh, by the way,
Or,
in the
Metro
application,
West.
you or I, Ed, can sit down with the application and say, could I fill it out?
yeah.
If I can't fill it out and you can't fill it out, the target audience can't fill it out.
It's, in the
Well, the
application.
seniors can't, yeah.
what
You're
you-
the target audience,
but what-
yeah.
first-time home buyers.
So,
I mean,
but,
you're-
but know that most of the applications, what they're asking for is information that will already be attached to their mortgage application.
Right,
Right?
right.
And so, we're not, again, we want to be I think
Make
part of
it-
what we want
make
to
it
do is we want to be careful to say, they're getting a mortgage for this property,
That's right.
right? We're helping them do that. What information would they be providing the mortgage company for the underwriting
Yeah.
that we want to see to validate that they qualify for the program?
And the
And-
first applicant or two who come through will help you sort out what you forgot.
Yeah,
And that's why I call it a rapid prototype.
Yep.
Rapid prototypes are all about, hey, you put it out there and see if it works, and if it doesn't work, fix it.
yeah. And so that, I mean, that's where we are, that's in a sense.
Great,
My
great,
hope
great
is that
progress.
by January, we have a draft
Yep.
application,
Yep.
and we will know whether or not we need to go to bid.
Right.
And if we do, if Kate and I can pull things together fast enough, I would hope that our January meeting, we have the RFP
Sure,
ready for
rough
review
one,
and approval,
Great.
so we can issue it. If we don't need to go to RFP, we could potentially launch this program as early as March.
March, I was gonna say the spring, yep.
And there's excitement. I expect that, and because there's a town employee eligibility component,
Right.
as we go forward, I know that. there'll
And
be
that
interest-
eligibility-
There'll be interest in us meeting with department heads, so they understand when they're hiring and when they're talking to employees.
This is a benefit that they could
Yeah,
tap.
and for
Great.
clarity, the way we're doing this doesn't impact any non-union or contracts, employment contracts or any union contracts. The trust is a separate legal entity, even though we're an agent of the town. And we already have a ruling from the Ethics Commission that this isn't considered personal betterment tied to employment. So that there's not an ethics or conflict of interest unit for town employees. However, any individual who's involved in the administration of the program would be ineligible.
Yep.
And
Right.
for safety's sake, we'll say immediate family. So trustees, if we ever hire staff, our staff, if we hire Metro West, their employees and their immediate families would be ineligible. Every other town employee would be able to do it.
Right, and one of the things for town employees is they don't need to
Have the
meet
residency
the
requirement.
3-year
Residency requirement.
residency, well, not residency, but the.
The ownership,
Ownership.
right,
They, like, if they currently have a house, but,
yeah.
you know, they're driving,
Yeah.
you know,
They-
at
they have an-
distance.
They have an exemption the same way that 55 plus.
55 plus, right.
you know,
They fall into the same category,
Single family,
so
divorce, other things.
we're
we-
trying to, this is another encouragement, if you will. It's another tool to encourage, yeah, when it's appropriate for, you know, workforce people of the town to
Yeah.
come in with that, so.
You know, and now, it looks to me like in January, we want to start talking about how do we achieve a lot of community engagement.
Yeah.
This program needs community engagement. The activities we're doing with Beach and High Street required, so somewhere in the, you know, the next quarter or two, we're gonna have to do a lot of community engagement.
Yeah, I mean, I think as we head into the new year, a couple of things are coming in my mind. Not just about community engagement, but as we move past the concept stage on some of these projects, technical assistance.
Yep.
So I think there's discussion, one, you know, we should step back and look at our strategic plan and say,
Yep.
okay, we're 2.5 years into it.
Okay.
Where are we? What do we want to set the goals for the next 3 years? And start that process in January.
Sure,
Yep.
good.
But also look at, you know, what resources do we expect we're going to need for the next,
And go find them.
year and a half.
Yep.
So for example, you know, do we want to, you know, is we're expecting we'll take on the Housing Partnership Committee role, which includes monitoring affordable units, right? And what we've learned is that, yes, the affordable developments have been notifying the town of the rents they're charging,
Right.
but the town hasn't been exercising its right to ask for validation that those units are actually rented to people who qualify, right? So we want to, you know, periodically do that. You know, having someone or an organization that has the certification from
Yep.
the state, you know, is that a contracted service we
Right.
should be looking
That
at?
we would do.
Are we ready for, you know,
Right
maybe
now,
a
there's
part-time
only
staff person?
one property that,
There's actually more than one. That just-
besides
Ma-
Ellington.
Mass Housing hasn't communicated well, which
okay.
properties the mortgages have been paid off. So a little background information.
Yeah, we
When
need
there's
to- we need
affordable
to-
housing that requires, which is rental, that requires monitoring of rents and occupancy. If Mass Housing has funded that, affordability, then Mass Housing's the monitoring agent until the loan's paid off. At that point, it transfers to the town. However, if Mass Housing never picks up the phone and calls the town and says, hey, guys, here's the
We're
football,
done.
run with it,
Okay.
we don't know. So that all need. we
There
need
there
to-
may be a couple more
there may be
on
some-
the list that
There may
are,
be some additional ones.
We're gonna need somebody like Metro West Housing Resources. I
Or,
don't
right.
think they're the
Metro
right
West
one.
Community Development, MCO can do it as a
There's
contract.
various folks that we're gonna,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
we
No,
need contract help
There
from people
there
who
are
have this.
there are a number of options,
Right.
and so
We're
at
gonna
the
need to
January
do that.
meeting, we might need some time to,
Absolutely.
we can bring forward some of those options and discuss.
Yep.
Okay.
We're gonna need all that stuff, yep.
so we seem to have, next steps on this
Yep.
would be to get an an initial cut at the application. I think that's it, and then, socialize that around, amongst, and say, try to fill it out. How easy is this to fill
Right.
out for you?
Can we do it?
Grab your last year's tax return and everything else and see how we do with that, and then feed that back in, get it out to Metro West for their comments as well, and first, and then come back to us. Okay. Given that we are after 10:30, what we'll do is give a quick Lyman Street update, and I'll defer the community development block grant presentation till next month,
Okay.
which will be very quick anyhow. But it is another source of,
So-
I went to a
What
webinar
source to fund?
on
Right.
this. There's also, I'm going to go to the one on January 23rd, I think it
Right.
was, that, regarding home repair programs.
Yep.
That, it comes from HUD, but the state, AOHLC actually implements it. So there's some interesting opportunities through this program. Anyhow, Lyman Street, people may have seen in primarily social media, but the owners of Westborough Plaza, which is where the Stop and Shop is on Lyman Street, Tacnic Books, Staples,
yep.
that whole area. Gene Colangelo and Donna, his wife Donna, between them own that property, and what they're proposing to do, and they submitted I guess the project scope or the project specifications to the ZBA last week, and I guess it was last week, but basically they're looking to build 4-story structures, with the first floor being retail, commercial developments, and the top 3 being residential, for a total of 132. And they would do it both on where the Staples, side is, and then also.
At this point, it's just Staples and Home Goods.
It's just Staples and Home Goods. Okay,
the
they had
132.
talked about also,
There's other potential, but that's
But they,
not
I
part
mean,
of
their
our
proposal
submission.
to the ZBA is for,
Just that part.
for how many
for
units?
just that part, okay. Now, I don't know, they were, I think in total, but that would include if
That's
they
all we're
went around
talking
the
about.
corner.
Ed, that's all we're talking about is the 132 units.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Well-
if they haven't filed with the ZBA, it's not real.
Okay, huh?
The rest is confidential. You can't discuss it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not public.
Oh,
if they haven't filed with the ZBA, we shouldn't be talking about it.
okay, I saw that it had been. Okay,
Again,
let's
it's
move
probably
on.
It's probably out there in the rumor mill, but
Yeah.
we're an official body, we should try and stay with it.
Okay,
It's the
um,
132
So
units.
they've filed 132 units in the Westborough Plaza,
yep,
and
And my understanding is the ZBA they're looking for change of use for pre-existing nonconformance.
Yep.
And after which they would go through the planning board for the full special permit process, which, what they're looking to do is doable under existing zoning by special permit. And so there'll be the whole 6-month period, the public hearings, everything like that.
so at some point, we may want to offer an opinion.
So they've contacted us for
Yes.
guidance in the affordable component. By zoning, it's 20%.
20%.
20% affordable.
Yep.
Percentage based on the studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom units. So they've asked for guidance on affordability programs from the state and some contacts there and assistance. They are, and I think it's important to note that their target market is workforce housing, right? That they see this as,
Yeah,
that
okay.
they see this filling the documented need for rentals for young professionals,
Yep.
as well as downsize opportunities
Yep.
for seniors. That's sort of how they're designing the units.
Yep.
The fact that it's in a mixed commercial space makes it very prone, productive for that type of housing, because you don't have green space and you have limited parking. They expressed an interest in exploring opportunities for slightly higher affordable component
Right.
with assistance. They would need additional subsidy to make that
Sure. Yep.
work economically, because they understand that anything they do affordability is in perpetuity. And so that's just ongoing. That'll play out through the Zoning Board of Appeals, and we'll,
I assume they made a formal filing with ZBA?
yeah,
So, I mean, could somebody just mail that around to us? Save me the trouble of trying to go find it?
I'll go dig it out.
Just go, mail, I mean,
I'll dig it
it's
out.
a good place, it's just, I think we can, at least I can offer better opinions if I educate myself about what they're trying to do.
Yeah. No, I think it's a,
No,
it's an-
it's
I think,
great. It's
I think it's an
wonderful
interesting project. I
Yeah,
think it's
we had,
intended.
I mean,
There's going to be there are always going to be community concerns about potential school impact,
Absolutely.
about potential public safety, public
Yep.
service impact. And those will get worked through the existing ZBA and planning board special permit process, which is extremely intensive. But, based on what's been filed, the intent will fill a need in the community. People complain about the high cost of housing and not being enough, not affordable capital H official, but affordability of rental units. Not just adding to the inventory, but he's targeting certain price points specifically to address underserved aspects of our market. This could be good, but again, everyone who's watching, everyone who's got concerns about the project, at this point, it is concept stage and plan. And there's a lot of work that happens between now and any issuance of a special permit down the
I
road.
mean, our role can be to see, obviously, we would like to, beyond the 20%, if there's a way that we can help them through various state programs, introductions to the appropriate people, et cetera, to see if there's a way to increase the number of affordable units, the
Great
percentage.
opportunity for us to learn how to work with a
developer.
cooperative, willing developer,
Yep.
and to, and to do advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
Hard time with that word. So a wonderful opportunity.
Okay. Any other pressing issues before I call for adjournment? We're all set? We're all set. Okay, entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? We are adjourned, and thank you, Westboro TV.
Thank you.